Josh, Bobby, and Mark as we roll along here on a Wednesday, getting set for another week of college football. Again, we'll have a doubleheader here on the station on Saturday. I'll be with the Niners up in Bloomington, Indiana, Charlotte and Indiana at noon. Our airtime at 10. Colorado and Baylor we'll have in the evening here on the station starting at 7 o'clock. And to talk some college football, pleasure to go over the guest line and bring on from Fifth Down College Football. That's Mark Schipper. Mark, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm great. How are you doing?
We're doing well, Mark. Appreciate you hopping on with us. So let's start first. We got the news, I guess, either late last night or early this morning about Clemson, Florida State, and the ACC maybe trying to work things out here. What do you take away from that story, and is this overall a good thing for the ACC?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag. It's interesting. It sounds like it's about what was going to go down a couple of years ago when Clemson and Florida State were looking for unequal revenue sharing. So it sounds to me like the ACC wants to appease the two major football powers in the league and share revenue unequally based on TV power ratings and what they bring in. And then it sounds like they want to shorten up the horizon on the grant of rights, which goes from, I believe, 2036 and under this new deal to 2030, which is a significant rollback if it goes through. And that'll create another situation where we get some more clarity on future realignment in 2030.
So we got the ACC looking, and Mark, we had the news last week about the Pac-12. They obviously need two more teams. Where do you think the Pac-12 goes and what this kind of round of realignment will lead us?
Yeah, I think they're filling with G5s, obviously, and it's going to depend on what they want to do geographically. I've seen some reports of them going coast to coast for some brands over in the East. Memphis maybe was mentioned. I'm trying to remember the schools. But to me, just from a basic level, that sounds a little weird to me because I'm not sure how much value is there, and it becomes more expensive the further you spread out. So I would think they may look for a program in Texas somewhere, which is much closer to the West Coast. And then I think UNLV probably is still in the mix. UNLV is a strange school in terms of they're into sports and then they're not into sports and they care and then they don't. So I think if they can get a commitment from UNLV that they'll go in on football and keep it that way, UNLV could be in the mix as well. But that's I think that league, no matter what happens, is permanently a tier below. But it's an interesting development.
Mark, you mentioned Memphis. That name has to bring a rash to Florida State fans right now, and they hear it after what we saw Saturday at yet another just debacle down there at Doak Campbell. We talked about it earlier. Biggest surprise is that, to me, the fact we're sitting here in Florida State's 0-3 is just shocking. What has been the biggest reason why you think they are 0-3, and can they somehow salvage this season at this point?
Yeah, it's been crazy to watch the games and really the performances. The biggest issue to me is obviously when you're replacing 15 guys off a very good team, and many of them went to the National Football League. It's hard to replace professional players, but teams have to do that regularly, so that's not a complete excuse. I don't think Florida State hit on their transfers like they wanted to. I don't think the guys have got up to speed. I think they lost so much of the culture, that tough winning culture from last year, that it's not like it rolled over to this year. It just kind of disappeared. They've been really soft. I mean, just soft. Defensive line, offensive line, the linebackers can't cover people out of the backfield. They're not particularly good tacklers. So Florida State's getting kind of owned on the line of scrimmage. And then on the defensive side, they get past the line of scrimmage and the linebackers are getting owned. So that's a very bad situation if you're trying to win football games against powerful schools. And then, of course, DJ Uiagalelei at quarterback, he has not taken the jump that people keep expecting him to take. And he looks, with respect to DJU, like a pretty average major college quarterback. And I think it's going to be hard for Florida State without a leader at that position, a guy who can rally the team and get them going to make a big salvage of this season. But you'd certainly like to see him play tougher going forward.
And Mark, we talk about salvaging seasons. Clemson, after the first game against Georgia, it looked as bad as it could. And then it was App State, and I get Group of Five, but we know what the Mountaineers have done in their history, even of late, against Power 4 teams, and they destroyed them. Now they get NC State this weekend, a line that originally was around 7. Now it's up to 20 because of the belief in Clemson and maybe the lack of belief in NC State. So do you think Clemson did find themselves in that win against App State?
Yeah, and I think with NC State, too, I believe they're playing a backup quarterback in C.J. Bailey, who's a true freshman. So he's going to have a hard time against Clemson's defense, which is still a tough unit. Yeah, I expected Clemson to get better as the season went on. I expect them to be a solid program, probably compete for the ACC title. I think Clemson is down off the elite perch that they have been on for now. So I don't see Clemson battling back into national title contention, though they certainly could make a playoff. And I guess if you make a playoff, you got a chance. So I think Clemson's going to be pretty good going forward. And, a game like what they score 66 against App State, a game like that for your offense, which in some ways plays off confidence and just belief that what you're going to do is going to work, that can make a big difference in the season. So if Clemson does get that offense rolling, they're a tough out for certain.
Mark, Bobby mentioned a minute ago, Indiana take on Charlotte on Saturday. The Hoosiers certainly off to a good start. They're not the only team in the Big Ten that people are talking about. Nebraska has gotten off to a rip-roaring start. Those two teams, you buying in the Hoosiers and the Cornhuskers of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I am. They're good teams. Indiana, Kurt Cignetti was a great hire head coach, brought over great coaches with him, brought the best players off his JMU team with him, and he just knows what he's doing. So Indiana's just playing solid football. They nice stable of running backs, good wide receivers. They have a very competent quarterback, a guy who was a MAC Player of the Year a couple years ago. So he knows what he's doing. Indiana can play for certain. And then a pretty similar situation at Nebraska. I think Matt Rule is built for the college game as a head coach. His attitude, his approach, the type of energy he has, I think it's perfect for that age athlete. And he's a detail man. He's one of these head coaches who thinks of absolutely everything. He worries about everything, and he builds ground up. So, and he's got a fantastic quarterback in Dylan Raiola, and there's really no better way to spark your program than with an elite quarterback who is exciting to watch and gets on TV and you win games and et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so I think both Indiana and Nebraska are both for real. Nebraska probably a little – I wouldn't even say Nebraska's ahead right now. They're both solid.
Marco mentioned the troubles in Tallahassee, also troubles in Gainesville. Now, there's a lot of people that know Billy Napier would even make it to Wednesday after this weekend as still the head coach, but he's still there. What you're thinking of, does he somehow survive during the season, or would you be surprised if the Gators make a move during the season with him?
Well, making a move during the season has consequences, and particularly in the transfer portal and the expanded red shirt. I think did they move it to 5 games? Whatever it is, it's you can compete in up to 5 games. I may even be a little bit short on that and still take your red shirt. So if they get rid of Napier before the 5th game is over, I think you got to worry about guys redshirting and not playing and worrying about the future. And that goes even for guys who don't redshirt. So the transfer portal has changed that. Florida would have to make a major improvement everywhere for Billy to stay. Going back to getting rid of Billy. What do you do if you get rid of Billy Napier right now? Do you turn this over to his staff? Do you let them, play this season out and see what happens? I'm not sure how great of an idea it is to get rid of Billy right now and just kind of let the thing fall apart. But as far as long-term prospects go, I don't think Billy can can salvage this season to the point that they're going to keep it around, barring an ultimate miracle that's really kind of unimaginable at this point.
So with Mark Schipper, Fifth Down College Football here on the Afternoon Rush. Two teams that have been very impressive, Mark, so far this year, Texas and Tennessee. Now, Texas, obviously, the biggest win out of the bunch of what they did to Michigan. But who you been more impressed by so far through 3 weeks?
I think Texas overall, because of their depth and talent and sort of the experience that this group they currently has. I think they're just kind of on a classic championship competition arc with having guys in the program for a few years, guys who have gotten close but experienced setbacks and sort of the biggest stage. That traditionally has been, if you have the right guys on your roster, what fuels a championship run the following year. So Texas losing last year to Washington in the playoff, I think those guys are back and they have their priorities and their perspective right. But I will say about Tennessee has been scary. Even when Tennessee has not looked particularly sharp, like the NC State game, for example, they put up 51 points and just blasted the Wolfpack. So Tennessee going into Oklahoma this Saturday, I think will reveal more about just how solid Tennessee truly is. They've been impressive. So when I say Texas has been a little more impressive to me, Tennessee has been very impressive as well, and nobody wants to line up against that offense right now.
Mark Schipper, Fifth Down at College Football. Mark, we appreciate your time here in Charlotte. Thank you very much.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me. Take care.
Thank you. You too. There you go. Great stuff with Mark. We're halfway home here on a Wednesday, the top four. Go.